Have you ever realized that the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, but from the people you love the most? I learned that truth one damp afternoon when the phone rang in a kitchen, still smelling of fresh paint. Stay in the garage for a few days, Mom. We're bringing Kiara's parents and some friends up. If you embarrass us, I'll check you into assisted living. It was my son's voice, calm, practical, and ice cold. Something inside my chest, cracked small but final, like the sound of porcelain breaking in another room. My name is Dahlia Ellington, 60 years old, recently widowed after 35 years of marriage. 3 months ago, my husband Marcus died of a sudden heart attack. We had dreamed of a little farm, vegetables for him, flowers for me. When I was sorting through his papers, I discovered a $500,000 life insurance policy he had quietly taken out. I used that money to buy a small farm in North Georgia, the one we had always talked about. I thought it would be a place to heal, to breathe again, to remember love without pain. But before I could even unpack that phone call, turned my peace into humiliation. My only child, the boy I had carried for 9 months and defended all his life, spoke to me as if I were a stranger. Behind his words, I heard Kiara's laughter, sharp and distant, like the clinking of wine glasses. And in that moment, I understood in their world I had become an inconvenience, someone to hide in the garage. I didn't cry. I just sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the hills Marcus once promised we'd grow old together on. His voice came back to me, gentle as ever. You're stronger than you think. That night, I decided he was right. Because when you've lost everything, the man you loved, the family you built, the respect you thought was unbreakable, the only thing left to protect is your dignity. And from that moment on, I swore if they wanted to make me small, they were about to learn just how powerful a quiet woman can be. After Marcus's funeral, the house felt like a museum of everything we once were. His coat still hung by the door. His mug still sat beside the coffee pot, a faint trace of lipstick on the rim where he used to kiss me good morning. At night, I would lie on my side of the bed, waiting for the familiar weight of his body that would never return. The silence was so thick, it began to hum. Weeks passed, but grief didn't fade. It just changed shape. One morning, while sorting through his papers, I found a brown envelope I had never seen before. Inside was the insurance policy, $500,000 untouched, perfectly filed, as if Marcus had left it there for me to find when I needed it most. He had written one line in his tidy handwriting, "For Dahlia, for the life we didn't get to live." I cried until my chest hurt. But when the tears dried, something shifted. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel paralyzed by loss. I felt guided. Marcus had always dreamed of a small farm 2 hours north of Atlanta, where the hills rolled like sleeping giants and the air smelled like rain. He'd say, "When I retire, we'll raise chickens, plant tomatoes, and watch the stars." He never made it to retirement, but I decided I would make it there for him. I began searching online for properties. Every listing felt like a conversation with him. "Would you like this one? Marcus, too big, too small." Then one Tuesday morning, I saw it, a modest white farmhouse with a porch facing west, a creek running behind the barn, and 3 acres of open land. Price $350,000. My hands trembled as I signed the offer. It was the first major decision I had made without Marcus, and I felt both terrified and free. When the deal closed, I drove there alone. The drive took exactly 2 hours and 8 minutes. The road curved through forests that glowed gold under the afternoon sun. And when I reached the gate, a single oak tree stood at the entrance, tall, patient, like it had been waiting for me. I remember whispering, "We made it, Marcus." That night, I cooked pasta in the empty kitchen and ate by candlelight. The only sound, the steady hum of crickets outside. I thought of calling Andre, my only son, to share the news, to tell him I was finally doing something brave, something his father would have loved. I imagined him saying, "That's amazing, Mom. Dad would be proud." But when he picked up the joy in my chest, turned to ice. "You bought a farm with what money?" His voice flattened. "Marcus's insurance, son," I said softly. "It's beautiful. There's enough room for you and Kiara to visit. Maybe even he cut me off." "Mom, have you lost your mind? You blew Dad's insurance on some dump in the middle of nowhere." "Dump?" I repeated, shaking. "Andre, it's our dream." "Your dream," he snapped. "Not mine." The line went quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe he regretted it. But then he said the words that would change everything. "Kiara and I are bringing her parents up this weekend. You'll stay in the garage. If you make us look bad, I'll make sure you spend your next birthday in a nursing home." The call ended. The kitchen light flickered, once then went out, leaving me in the kind of darkness that isn't just around you. It's inside you. For a long moment, I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone and the echo of a life that had just ended. Not Marcus's, but the one I'd spent a lifetime building around a son who no longer saw me as his mother. But beneath the hurt, beneath the disbelief, a small spark began to glow, faint but alive. Marcus had always said I was stronger than I believed. That night, for the first time, I started to believe him. The next 3 days passed in a fog of numbness. I unpacked boxes, folded Marcus's shirts into neat stacks, and told myself this was just another argument that Andre didn't mean what he said. But every time I looked at the farmhouse, at the white porch, in the small window that caught the morning light, I felt the sting of his words again. "Stay in the garage." He said it like it was nothing, like I was nothing. On Wednesday morning, I decided to do exactly what he asked. If Andre wanted me in the garage, I would make that small space my own. The previous owners had left behind an old trunk, a few dusty boxes, and an antique landline telephone still plugged into the wall. Out of habit, more than curiosity, I lifted the receiver and was surprised to hear the faint hum of a working line. It was the kind of phone Marcus used to fix for fun, the kind that reminded me of the years when everything mechanical in our house had his fingerprints on it. That afternoon, I swept the floor, washed the window, and tried to see beauty in the simplicity. Maybe this was how Marcus wanted me to learn to stand alone, to build something from the pieces others overlooked. But that night, everything changed. It started with a ring. Not my cell phone, the house line. I picked it up without thinking. At the same time, someone in the main house answered. I froze. It was Andre's voice. "Did you talk to the old woman?" Kiara's tone followed casual and dismissive. "Yeah, I told her to sleep in the garage. She cried, of course, but she'll do it." Laughter. Their laughter. My fingers tightened around the receiver. I didn't dare breathe. "Perfect," Kiara said. "My parents are going to love this place." "How much did you say it cost?" $500,000, Andre replied. "They don't need to know it was only $350. My heart dropped. They were already lying about the farm. But that wasn't the worst of it. Kiara's voice lowered, suddenly sharp. "So when do we start the plan?" "Give her a month," Andre said. "Let her think everything's fine. Then we start the pressure. I talked to my cousin, the psychiatrist. He'll sign whatever we need for $5,000. Kiara laughed again. "Perfect. Once she's declared incompetent, you'll have full legal control." "Then what?" "Then we sell everything," Andre said coldly. "Put her in the cheapest nursing home we can find. She won't last long there anyway." For a moment, I couldn't even move. It felt as if the air had turned solid, pressing against my lungs. I slowly set the receiver down and sank to the floor, the cold cement biting into my knees. My son, my only son, was planning to take everything from me. Not just the money, the house, my freedom, my life. I sat there for hours, staring at the shadows on the wall, trying to understand how love could twist into something so cruel. And then, like a whisper carried by the wind, Marcus's words came back to me again. "You're stronger than you think." By morning, my fear had hardened into clarity. If Andre wanted a game of power, he had chosen the wrong opponent. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to prepare. And when they arrived that weekend, smiling and pretending nothing was wrong, they would walk into a house that belonged entirely to me and a plan they would never see coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. The walls of the garage seemed to whisper every word I'd overheard. Incompetent nursing homes sell everything. Each syllable echoed like a hammer against the inside of my skull. By 2 a.m., I gave up pretending to rest. I made myself tea, sat on the edge of my cot, and stared at the boxes I still hadn't unpacked. Most of them were Marcus's things, his papers, old bills, family photos. Touching them hurt, but something inside me whispered, "Look closer." I opened the first box. Receipts, postcards, a few tools. Then another full of photographs of our early years, our wedding day. Andre as a baby, smiling in Marcus's arms. I traced my finger along my husband's face, wondering if he had ever imagined that same child growing up to destroy us. At the bottom of the last box, I found a faded manila folder with a label written in Marcus's neat handwriting, "Andre Confidential." For a moment, I froze. My heart began to pound so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Marcus had never hidden anything from me, or so I thought. With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, handwritten notes, and a letter addressed to Marcus in Andre's handwriting. "Dad, I need $10,000 urgently. It's a safe investment. Don't tell Mom you know how she gets about money. I'll pay you back in 6 months." In the margin, Marcus had written in pen, "Andre, this is the 5th time you've asked this year. What's really going on?" I turned page after page, loan requests, excuses, bank transfers. Over 5 years, Marcus had given Andre more than $80,000. Each note carried a different story: Kiara's medical bills, job losses, urgent opportunities that went nowhere. Not one repayment, not one sign of gratitude. Then I found a letter Marcus had written, but never sent. My hands shook as I unfolded it. "Dahlia, my love, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. There are things I never told you because I didn't want to hurt you. Andre is not the man we believed he was. He has lied to me, stolen from me, and threatened me. He said if I ever told you the truth, he would find a way to hurt you. That's why I kept silent. But I fear what he'll do when I'm no longer here to protect you. Please be careful. And remember, you are stronger than you think." The paper blurred as my tears fell. Marcus had known. All along, he had known. He'd carried that secret to his grave to protect me from our own son. A noise outside startled me. Tires crunching gravel. I glanced at the clock. 11:46 p.m. Through the small window, I saw headlights. Andre and Kiara. They'd arrived a day early. I quickly tucked the folder back into the box and shoved it under the cot. From the shadows of the garage, I watched them through the curtain. They entered the house like owners, turning on lights, opening cabinets, laughing. Andre pointed toward the living room, gesturing as if planning where to move the furniture. Kiara trailed behind him, her heels clicking across the floor. Marcus and I once dreamed of polishing together. For the first time since that terrible call, I didn't feel fear. I felt something colder focus. They thought I was a weak, sentimental old woman. They had no idea what I knew, no idea what I had. And as I sat there, the plan began to form in my mind, calm, deliberate, unstoppable. This weekend, they would humiliate me. They would treat me like a servant in my own home. But before the weekend ended, I would make them face the truth in front of everyone they were trying to impress. And this time, I wouldn't whisper. I would speak so clearly, even the walls would remember. Friday evening arrived with the smell of rain in the air and tension thick enough to touch. By 6 o'clock, the gravel road leading to my farm shimmered with headlights. Through the window of the garage, I saw them Kiara's parents stepping out of a black Mercedes, followed by two well-dressed couples carrying wine bottles and gift bags. Their laughter floated toward the house, bright and artificial, like crystal breaking. Inside, Kiara greeted them as though she were the lady of the estate. Andre followed with his perfect host smile, the one I'd seen since he was a child, whenever he wanted to impress someone. I waited until he came to the garage. "Mom," he said sharply, as if calling a servant. "Come out. Kiara needs help preparing dinner for 8 people. And change your clothes. You look like a vagrant." I glanced down at the blue blouse Marcus had given me on our last anniversary. It was soft, from years of washing the sleeves, a little faded. But it made me feel close to him. Still, I didn't argue. Not yet. I walked into my own kitchen, the one I had paid for, and began to cook, while the sound of laughter and wine glasses filled the next room. As I basted the chicken, I heard fragments of conversation drifting from the dining area. Andre was just telling us what a brilliant investment this farm is, said Mr. Clayton, Kiara's father, his voice booming. $500 for a property that's already worth $700,000. Smart move, son. Kiara laughed softly. My husband always finds the best opportunities. I froze my hands, slick with oil and disbelief. $500,700. They had inflated the price by over $300,000 to look wealthier than they were. Then another guest asked the question that made my blood run cold. And his mother, does she live here too? A pause. Andre's voice followed, calm, careful. She does, but it's complicated. She hasn't been well since my father passed. We're taking care of her. But it's been hard. Oh, the poor woman, someone murmured. Kiara sighed dramatically. Andre has been so patient with her. I don't know if I could do what he does. Something inside me snapped. The heat from the stove no longer came from the burners, it was in my chest, rising, expanding. They were turning me into a story, a burden, a woman to be pitied and managed. When the food was ready, Andre appeared inspecting the dishes as if he were a critic. He tasted the gravy, frowned, and said, "Too salty. Make it again." "Andre," I whispered, "it's perfect." "Your father loved." "My father isn't here anymore," he snapped. "Make it again. And don't talk back in front of our guests." Kiara glided in her black dress, gleaming under the chandelier. She looked me up and down. "Dinner ready?" she asked, smiling sweetly. "Almost." "Good. Andre says you've been forgetting things lately. It must be hard. Yesterday you left the stove on, didn't you?" I met her eyes steady. "No, Kiara, I didn't." She tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "Of course, dear. We all have moments. That's why it's good you have us to look after you." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled the kind of calm smile that scared Marcus when he knew I was about to do something decisive. I served dinner in silence. They talked, laughed, toasted, and I stood by invisible until Andre started telling a story, how he had convinced his grieving mother to invest in the farm for her own good. The laughter at the table blurred into static. I could feel Marcus's letter burning in my apron pocket, alongside the documents and the phone with their recorded conversation. When the noise subsided, I spoke softly, but clear enough for everyone to hear. Actually, I said, setting down a tray of glasses, I decided to buy this farm myself. It was my husband's dream and mine. Silence fell like a curtain. Andre's eyes darkened. Mom, the adults are talking. I am an adult, Andre, I said. And this is my house? Kiara tried to laugh it off. Of course, Mrs. Ellington. I know what Andre meant, I interrupted. And I know why all of you are here. Mr. Clayton frowned. Excuse me. I reached into my apron and placed a stack of papers on the table. Your son-in-law told you this farm cost $500,000. Here are the purchase documents, $350,000 paid in full by me. Why do you think he lied? Kiara's face drained of color. Mrs. Ellington, you must be mistaken. I'm not. I laid down another pile of papers. These are records of over $80,000 Andre borrowed from my late husband. Money he never repaid. Mom, stop, Andre shouted. You're embarrassing yourself. But I wasn't finished. I took out my phone and held it up. Earlier this week, I overheard something on the house line. I recorded part of it. Would you like to hear what Andre said about me? No. He lunged forward, but I pressed play. His voice filled the dining room unmistakable. Once she's declared incompetent, we'll sell the place and keep the money. The table went still. Mr. Clayton's hand trembled around his wine glass. Kiara's mother covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I turned to Andre. You see, son, the problem with lies is that they sound different when everyone hears them. He was shaking now, anger replacing fear. You think this changes anything, he hissed. That money was mine. You owe me. No, I said quietly. A son doesn't own his mother. A son honors her. Kiara's father stood, his judge's voice booming. I want to hear the rest of that recording. Andre froze. Kiara's eyes filled with tears. From the phone came her voice clear and cold. My cousin can sign the incompetency papers for $5,000. Once she's in a home, we'll sell everything. Mr. Clayton turned to her slowly. Your cousin, the psychiatrist, the one you introduced us to Dad. I can explain? No. There is no explanation. Andre slammed his fists on the table. She deserved it. She's always controlled us enough. Mr. Clayton roared. You and my daughter have committed a crime. The attorney guest, David Hayes, spoke up from the corner. What you've described is conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted extortion. Mrs. Ellington has all the evidence she needs. The room erupted in murmurs. Guests began standing, gathering their coats, escaping the disaster. Within minutes, only 3 of us remained, Andre, Kiara, and me. Andre's face twisted into something I barely recognized. This isn't over, he said quietly. I'll take everything from you. I reached into my apron one last time and pulled out another set of papers. It's already over, I said. This farm is now under an irrevocable trust. You're not the beneficiary. In fact, you're legally excluded from any inheritance if you ever try to harm or manipulate me again. His jaw dropped. You can't do that. I'm your son. No, I replied, steady as stone. My son died the day he chose greed over love. He tore the papers, threw them to the floor, and stormed out, Kiara sobbing behind him. When the door slammed shut, I exhaled for the first time all night. The dishes were cold, the candles half melted, but the air felt different, lighter. For the first time since Marcus's death, I wasn't afraid. I was free. The morning after the dinner, I woke to silence so complete, it almost hummed. The dining room still smelled of spilled wine and shame. The documents I'd laid out the night before were neatly stacked again. David Hayes, the attorney guest, had helped me gather them before he left. He'd pressed a business card into my palm and said quietly, "Call me Mrs. Ellington. They won't let this go." He was right. I spent the weekend cleaning, locking away Marcus's letters and the recordings in a fireproof box. The farm felt emptier, but somehow stronger, like a house that had survived a storm. Then the calls began. At first, just a few. "Mom, please, let's talk," Andre said on the third morning. I hung up. "You can't ignore me forever," came another. "I'll make this right." But his tone wasn't repentance. It was calculation. By the end of the week, the messages shifted. "You don't know who you're dealing with. You think that lawyer can protect you. I'll get what's mine one way or another." David came by every other day, checking the locks, installing cameras, helping me file for a restraining order. He also brought a forensic psychologist to certify my mental competence, an accountant to review my finances, and a social worker specializing in elder abuse. I felt ridiculous at first. All that protection for one woman and a patch of land. But David just smiled. "Andre's already shown what he's capable of. Let's make sure the law sees it too." That evening, the phone rang again. "Mom," Andre said, his voice smooth, almost tender. "I've been thinking. Maybe we both said things we didn't mean." I meant every word I said quietly. A pause. Then his tone hardened. "You have 72 hours to reverse that trust, or you'll regret it." He hung up. The next night, I saw headlights sweep across the windows. I turned off the lights and stayed silent. Knocks rattled the door. "Mom, open up." Then Kiara's voice strained, frightened. "Andre, stop this. It's wrong." "Shut up," he hissed. "She's my mother. I have a right to be here." The knocking turned into pounding. Then the sound of glass shattering. I crouched behind the kitchen counter, heart hammering. Mom Andre's voice called sing-song, like when he was little and wanted to scare me during hide-and-seek. "Come out. We just want to help you." I dialed David's number with shaking hands. He answered on the first ring. "They're here," I whispered. "Stay hidden," he said. "Police are on their way." Footsteps moved through the house. The living room, the hallway, the pantry door creaking open. I held my breath. Then Kiara's voice, again trembling. "Andre, please, this is breaking and entering." "Stop. She owes me everything," he shouted. The next sound was a siren in the distance, rising like salvation. Police, hands up. Chaos erupted, running, shouting a crash as someone tripped over a chair. Then silence again, broken only by the sound of radios crackling and boots on the porch. When I finally stepped out of the closet, I saw David standing beside two officers. His face softened when he saw me. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head. "They're both under arrest," he said. "Breaking and entering property damage, harassment, and with everything we've recorded, the restraining order will be permanent." I looked around my home, the shattered glass, the overturned chair, the trail of muddy footprints on the tile. This was what my son had become. And yet as I stood there among the wreckage, I didn't feel fear. I felt power, quiet, earned power. The kind Marcus used to say was stronger than any anger. Andre had come to steal my peace. Instead, he had taught me how to defend it. And as the police cars drove away, blue lights fading into the trees, I whispered into the night, "It's over, Marcus. I finally protected myself." 6 months passed. 6 months since the night police lights turned my driveway blue, since the sound of glass shattering finally gave way to silence. In that silence, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as a woman who refused to disappear. The court had issued a permanent restraining order against Andre. He received 1 year of probation for breaking and entering and harassment. Kiara, to my surprise, cooperated with the authorities in exchange for leniency. In her statement, she revealed details I hadn't known, how Andre had planned to drug me slowly, to make it appear as if I had dementia, to strengthen their case for guardianship. I never thought he'd actually do it, she told the court, her voice trembling. But he said she stole his inheritance. He said he deserved everything. Kiara's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Clayton, came to see me afterward. He, the former judge who had once toasted to my son's brilliance, stood on my porch with tears in his eyes. "We raised our daughter to be better than this," he said. "And I raised my son to be kind," I replied softly. "But we don't always get to choose what they become." It was a strange comfort, two parents both grieving the children they had lost while those children still lived. That spring, I decided to do something with the pain, something Marcus would have been proud of. I met with Sarah Jenkins, the director of a nonprofit that helped victims of elder abuse. She looked around the farm, the big kitchen, the empty guest rooms, the stables that hadn't seen a horse in years, and smiled. "This could be a refuge," she said, "a place for women like you." At first, the idea terrified me. Could I really open my home again after everything? But every morning I watched the sunrise from the porch, and I thought of the women I'd met through Sarah widows, grandmothers, survivors of quiet wars inside their own families. And I realized I wasn't alone, so I began. I used part of my savings and what remained of Marcus's insurance to convert the old stables into small cottages. Each had a bed, a table, and a view of the fields. David helped me structure the refuge legally, so it could sustain itself. The trust would cover the property's maintenance and a small stipend for each resident. It's not charity. David said, signing the final document, "It's justice." The first 3 women arrived in early autumn. Margaret, 68, had been thrown out by her son after he married. 40 years in that house, she said, wiping her eyes. And they told me I was a burden. Elaine, 72, had her savings stolen by her grandchildren. "They used my credit card to buy a car," she said bitterly. When I confronted them, they said I'd forgotten I'd agreed. And Rose, 59, had fled after discovering her daughter was drugging her food to keep her docile. "I thought I was losing my mind," she whispered. The first night we ate soup and bread at the big kitchen table. The silence was heavy, each of us carrying a lifetime of betrayal. But when Margaret laughed softly at something, Rose said the sound broke the air, open like sunlight through clouds. Days turned into weeks, and the refuge began to live and breathe. Margaret planted a garden of vegetables and herbs where the horses used to stand. Elaine handled the finances, keeping ledgers so detailed she could have run a bank. Rose started literacy classes in the nearby town, teaching older women how to read and write again. And me, I finally slept without fear. For the first time since Marcus's death, the house no longer echoed with loneliness. It hummed with quiet strength the sound of women healing. One evening, while watering the flowers near the porch, my phone rang. A young voice, hesitant. "Mrs. Ellington, my name is Patricia Wilson. I'm a social worker from General Hospital. We have a 75-year-old woman who was beaten by her grandson. We were told you might have a place for her." I looked out at the cottages glowing in the sunset, smoke rising from their chimneys. "Yes," I said. "Bring her tonight." When Carmen arrived, frail and trembling, Margaret wrapped her in a blanket. Elaine made tea, and Rose hummed a song from her childhood. Watching them, I felt something shift inside me again, that same spark that Marcus used to see in my eyes. Once I had dreamed of a quiet life with him on a farm filled with peace. Now I had created something better, a place where peace wasn't just a dream, it was a choice. And as the night settled over the hills, I whispered into the wind, "We did it, Marcus. Your dream became something larger, a home for those who had nowhere else to go." 3 weeks later, on a quiet morning filled with birdsong, David Hayes came by with his usual warmth and a folder under his arm. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where my world had once fallen apart, now covered with flowers Margaret had picked that morning. He stirred his coffee, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Dahlia," he said softly, "Andre wants to see you." I looked up from my cup, the name alone enough to chill the air. Why, he says he wants to apologize. His probation officer says he's attending therapy. They think he's changed. For a long time, I said nothing. Outside, the wind moved through the tall grass, the sound soft and steady, the kind of peace I used to pray for. A part of me, the mother part, felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he had changed. Maybe the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard was still in there somewhere. But then another part of me remembered the sleepless nights, the fear, the broken window, the sound of my son's voice calling me a burden. I remembered Margaret's panic attacks, Elaine's distrust, Rose's trembling hands, and Carmen's bruises. They had all believed in second chances, and all been hurt again. "No," I said quietly. "I don't want to see him." David nodded, his expression gentle but sad. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it means finally closing the door." He smiled faintly. "Would you like me to send him a message? Tell him I said that I wish him peace and healing, but he'll have to find it without me." When David left the house, filled with the afternoon light, golden, forgiving whole, from the porch, I could see Margaret tending to her garden, Elaine balancing the ledger books on the swing rows, teaching Carmen how to use a phone. The sound of laughter drifted through the open window, a harmony of voices that didn't exist a year ago. My phone buzzed a text from Elaine. "Thank you for giving us a home where we can be ourselves again." I smiled and put the phone away. The farm that had once been my escape had become something far greater, a refuge for women who refused to disappear. As the sun began to set, painting the hills in amber and rose, I whispered to the wind, "Marcus, you wanted a farm where we could live in peace. I've built one not just for us, but for all the women who needed to find themselves again. Andre had tried to take everything from me, my money, my home, my dignity, my freedom. But in losing him, I found the one thing no one could ever steal myself. And this time, peace wasn't given to me. I earned it with boundaries, with courage, with love. So if you're listening to my story tonight, wherever you are, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence just because they share your blood. You are allowed to choose peace over guilt, dignity over approval, and love over fear. I lost a son, but I gained a family, a chosen one, built on truth and compassion. And for the first time in 60 years, I am free. If you enjoyed my story, tell me where you're listening from, your city, your country, your quiet corner of the world. Because every time one of you writes back, I know that this little farm, this place born from pain and rebirth, has reached another heart. And that means we are healing together. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe. There are more life stories waiting for you.